Hello, Zero Books readers. In this YouTube video, we'll explore the crisis known as capitalism. That is, we'll look at the continued economic crisis, the failed protest movements, the retro digital culture, the psychotic businessmen, and even those pesky Russian cyberterrorists. Only, we'll be looking at it all through the lens of a TV cult hit from the USA television network. The show is Mr. Robot, and the question that confronts us is whether Rami, Malek, and Christian Slater are stuck in the same capitalist realist genre that we are, or whether they found a show that can imagine the end of capitalism as easily as it can imagine the end of the world.
The infamous Emperor Nero played an instrument very similar to the one she's playing, the lyre. Legend has it that he played it merrily as he watched.
As he watched?
As he watched Rome burn.
Created by Sam Ishmael, the television thriller Mr. Robot is so topical that it is practically prescient, telling the story of a mentally ill hacker named Elliot Alderson as he joins a cyber-terrorist group called F Society and takes on a corporation called E-Corp. The program is a wish-fulfillment fantasy for millennials who imagine that they are members of Anonymous, a retro mashup aimed at the now middle-aged Generation X, and a philosophical thought experiment on capitalist ontology and what it would take to get beyond this reality. Borrowing from Fight Club, The Matrix, Hackers, Back to the Future, Alf, Children of Men, The Parallax View, and a myriad of other nerdy classics from the last 50 years of television and movies, the show seems strangely realistic, precisely for being or hyper-real. And as such, it situates the viewer snugly into its world and worldview, and its fans are interpolated into a world and narrative that wants nothing except to resist interpolation.
What is it about society that disappoints you so much?
Oh, I don't know. Is it that we collectively thought Steve Jobs was a great man, even when we knew he made billions off the backs of children? Fuck society.
Elliot, you're not saying anything.
In his book, Capitalist Realism, critical and cultural theorist Mark Fisher starts by defining his central concept through a reference to Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. The film depicts a dystopian UK set in an infertile 2027. The film's world without children, without a future, is overrun by militarized police, mass poverty, refugees, elite despair, and a tiny middle class of cubicle workers whose ennui is so pronounced that it has transformed itself into a numb nihilism. For Fisher, the film is a quintessential example of filmic capitalist realism. Children of Men connects with the suspicion that the end has already come, the thought that it could well be the case that the future harbors only reiteration and repermutation. Could it be that there are no breaks, no shocks of the new to come?
100 years from now, there won't be one sad fuck to look at any of this. What keeps you going?
You know what it is, Theo? I just don't think about it.
Mr. Robot takes up this question from Fisher and asks a question of its own. What would have happened if Occupy Wall Street, the Arab Spring, and Anonymous had all succeeded and overthrown the banks and corporations back in 2011? Unlike some of the films that the show counts as an influence, movies like The Matrix or V for Vendetta, the story doesn't end once the shit hits the fan or the masses hit the streets, but sticks around and shows us what happens the day after. Another difference between Mr. Robot and Children of Men or other dystopian filmic futures is how directly the show names the problem that it is trying to overcome.
Giving them all the information.
Let me tell you why you're really here. You're here because you sense something wrong with the world. Something you can't explain. But You know it controls you and everyone you care about.
What are you talking about?
Money.
In Mr. Robot, what has to be taken down isn't a computer-generated reality, it isn't a totalitarian government, but corporations, financial centers, records of debt, and ultimately capitalism itself. Taking down capitalism is F Society's entire purpose.
You're blowing up a gas pipeline.
The world is a dangerous place, Elliot. Not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. This is war. People will die. C'est la mort. And once we blow up the pipeline, Darlene's worm will kick into high gear at the U.S. data center, which you helped us to install. Thank you very much. The redundant backups at their eastern data center in China. The Dark Army is covering us on that.
Dark Army. Why, man? They got no code. They hack for anyone. Terrorists, North Korea, Iran, Russia.
Which means they hate U.S. capitalism just as much as anyone.
Mr. Robot dares to question the reality of capitalism. And, interestingly, while Fisher interprets Caron's Children of Men as an allegory describing our present, our society where all of culture has been absorbed by a capitalist order that assigns all cultural objects, whether they are religious iconography, pornography, or Das Kapital, a monetary value, the USA Network has produced a show that hews much more faithfully to Marx. Rather than feel defeated by the fact that all religious and political illusions have been substituted by shameless, direct, and brutal exploitation, Mr. Robot attempts to approach this truth with, if not sober senses, then at least anger and refusal. The question for a Mr. Robot fan is whether the show, whether we will be able to learn as we go along. At the end of the first season, the hackers delete all debt in an effort to destroy E-Core, in an effort to destroy capitalism. But the chaos they create only emboldens and cements E-Core's power.
This was always the future, Jack. The 5/9 attacks, and they just accelerated it.
And as the second season slowly unwound, many plot twists and riddles were laid out, but there were no new solutions. And despite hints about a revolutionary Bernstein effect that would make another reality, another timeline, another world possible, the second season concludes just as the first season had, with intent to destroy all debt.
It's what you wanted. You said to Darlene before we started this thing that we had to go all the way. It was all part of the plan. Otherwise, what was the point of the hack? If we were going to do this, we had to go all the way. And that, Elliot, is what I want. It's what you asked me here for.
Then tell me, what is that exactly? What is all the way?
It's been said over and over that it is easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine life after or beyond capitalism. And it's true. But it's only true because imagining the absence or the end of something is always easy, while imagining something, especially something new, is hard.
Well, I guess it all depends on what your definition of real is.
Body asleep, mind awake, body asleep.